Hey everybody, welcome back to another tactical fly fisher video here on the water. Today we're just going to have some fun, do some Loch style lake fishing on one of our favorite reservoirs, and hopefully the audio works this time because we had this video shot a week ago and I went back and there were some glitches. So anyway, yeah, we got a calm morning to start with, but it's supposed to get windy this afternoon, so we'll talk about how we're fishing in each and hopefully get a bunch of fish to the boat and give you some tips on what we're doing and the flies we're using, the retrieves we're using, that type of stuff. So yeah, let's get after it. Hope you enjoy the video. If you remember from our last video, I taught you how to do a quick line change, and we've fished for longer than I thought with an intermediate line here without any fish. I only had one grab so far, so I'm going to go ahead and switch, go a little bit deeper. Sun is kind of bright and high today, and we originally didn't have much wind. We got a little bit now, but the fish don't seem to be super high, so we're going to go to a type 3 line and we'll see how that goes. There we go. Nice. All right, that's good. we keep having audio issues, which I think we finally got sorted out here, but I made that line change, and immediately the first cast after I made that line change to 3, I caught a fish, and we've caught a couple more since, and another one still. Definitely finding fish a little bit deeper. We got here kind of late today. We only got here around lunchtime. I had some daddy daycare I needed to do this morning, and so we didn't get here till later, and the sun was already pretty high. This is the smallest fish of the day so far. Oops. Does not want to pose for the camera. There he is. Little guy. Thank you, Mr. Cutthroat. But we got here when the sun was already pretty high, and a lot of times this fall I've found fish pretty shallow, so I had an intermediate line up on here, but wasn't getting any fish, so I made that switch to that type 3 line, and on my first cast I caught a fish. Didn't change anything else, didn't change a fly, didn't change a retrieve, and I've caught a few fish since. But I've also been watching on the side scan on my sonar, and I all of a sudden wasn't really picking up fish as much anymore, and I'm starting to pick them up down deeper on the sonar when I switched views to the downward scan. So it tells me probably that there's more fish moving down. I might even switch lines here in a bit again to a type 5 or a type 7 to see if I can get on top of those fish some more. But definitely up high wasn't the way to go to begin with. One other thing from today, we're out over 39, 40 feet of water right now. This specific reservoir in the fall, early on in September and that time, a lot of the fish are up really shallow. When I was here, well, it's the end of October now. When I was here at the end of September, about a month ago, you couldn't go shallow enough. I was catching fish in 3 feet of water or less, and lots of fish in 8 or shallower. But then literally about 2 weeks later, after a cold snap, I came back. The water had dropped temperature-wise about 5 degrees or so, and the fish just weren't in the shallows anymore. And so then they kind of move out over the deeper water and start eating a lot of zooplankton once the hatches in the shallow have kind of died for the year and it's gotten too cold. So at that point, it's a wise thing to go ahead and start fishing out deeper and look for suspended fish. And here, we marked a couple waypoints last time we were up here, which was last week, out over 50 plus feet of water over here that we'll check out in a little bit, and they had lots of fish. And similar with one behind us, we just drift Loch style out with the wind here and cover lots of water, and we kind of run into random pods of fish throughout the lake, and then I'm able to mark them on the GPS and go back and find them, and they're usually there again. So we'll keep at it, hopefully keep putting some fish in the boat, and maybe mess around with a few more depths and retrieves, and hopefully we'll have a lot more action to come. He fouled the tail on the fly. I hate it when that happens. Yeah, took the fly, but missed it, fouled the tail, and then whenever that happens, they never come back. But there's quite a few shown on that side scan now. First group of fish we've seen in a while. I'm going to mark this spot. Because that's 2 takes and 2 casts. And they're just suspended out over like 40 feet of water here again. We checked out 2 of the spots that I had marked from our trip last week or the week before, and we didn't find any fish there, not on the sonar or that wanted to eat our flies. And we saw some boats over in this other bay over here, just kind of out deep. So we figured we'd slow cruise over here, see if we found any on the fish finder on the way. And we didn't, so we just zoomed over here, and sure enough, my first 2 casts resulted in a couple of takes. Missed them both, but first action we'd had in a while. So hopefully as we keep drifting through here, we'll find some more. So we've been playing with suspended fish and having kind of sporadic success so far. Less than I expected, given normal history here, but we drifted into the shallows with this one. Not super shallow, this is over 15 feet of water instead of 40. And another nice fish. So we'll maybe do a few drifts more in the shallows here and then see how that goes. And if we don't get them, we'll see if we can find some pods out deep again. That one was on a type 5, just ate a white streamer from a bunny leech that was white. All right, so we've been drifting around here, and we found some fish on the far bank, but this is an area that several weeks ago when it was a lot warmer I found a lot of fish in, and then the next time they weren't here. At least they weren't here that wanted to eat. But we just rolled in here on the opposite side of this bay and started in about 15 feet of water and drifting out, and we've been going through 18 to 20 feet of water here and catching a bunch of fish for the last little bit, or at least having lots of takes. And most of them are smaller fish like this. Seems like in this lake, so far today anyway, there's been bigger fish but fewer of them in the shallows. And then when you do find a pod of fish out suspended like this, they tend to be smaller fish like that. So, but yeah, we'll get some more, and you can see we're back drifting kind of on the other side of the bay here. I've got my side scan and my traditional sonar showing right now, but one thing I am able to do with this sonar is mark things on the chart, and you can see I've got my track here, but also if you look real close here, you'll see I just marked a waypoint back there, and that waypoint was where we started out banging some fish there, and we've still been getting them as we've drifted out. So those waypoints are nice, especially when you're loch style fishing. Whenever you're getting a few fish, you can drop a point and come back and check them later, and most of the time there's fish there. And the interesting part, oh, there's Connor just got another one.
That's right.
But it's nice to be able to come back and check them as you want. And a lot of times there's still fish there, but in subsequent weeks, sometimes like between last week and this week, we haven't found fish in the same spot. So that's one of the benefits of loch style fishing or drifting, is that you're covering ground, always hoping to find aggressive new fish. And on top of that, you're able to cover parts of the reservoir that you wouldn't if you were just anchored. or slowly moving, trolling, whatever. And the boat isn't bugging the fish either because you're casting downwind. Well, it took us a few hours to really put together a solid game that was getting us a lot of fish, but we finally have, and it's mainly just been location. It's pretty typical on this lake. It's a really big reservoir, and there's a lot of fish in it, but they're often concentrated in certain areas. And so being able to cover water until you find them is a really important thing. And here's another nice cutty, which ate a polar humungus, just like a silver humungus, but made with UV polar chenille. So just this guy right here, really simple fly. But we've been drifting between 18 and 26 feet, and the fish are suspended right at the top. I mean, I've got a DI5 line on, and I keep telling myself to take it off because I'm getting them early in the retrieve, and there's no reason to have it on. So I probably will here in a bit. It's just that we've both still been catching fish, so I haven't been willing to do it yet, but I think that's going to happen. But nice to finally be putting a pattern together. So you'll notice in the bottom of the boat we have a little bit of a drogue pile here. One thing we've been doing today is reacting to the wind. I've got 3 separate drogues that I have for my boat. Really only the one that I'm pulling right now would be legal in competition, but I have the others that are different sizes that will make the boat go different speeds depending upon the wind. We had some really heavy wind earlier, and we were trying to drift some pretty short areas on the bank over there where we were getting a few fish. But now that we've got an area that has fish kind of spread out, we're trying to move through them a little bit quicker, and especially since the wind is a little bit slower now. So we've got just the regular rectangular drogue right now that I just pulled, and we're going to zip back to the waypoint that I dropped up here that was at the beginning of our last drift where we caught a lot of fish, and start another drift, and hopefully it'll be as good as the last one. But I'm just making a nice long cast here, hand twisting for a second to let it settle, fish to drop, and let those fish or those flies just kind of sink slowly and not really move. And then I'm doing a varied strip retrieve, kind of a medium speed with some long pauses in there. I've also caught quite a few fish doing a roly-poly, which is just a hand over hand retrieve. We'll show that to you in a little bit. But erratic, and sometimes I'll go back to the hand twist, and then a few quick strips, and I just had one on the hang after doing that. Oh, there he was again. Come on, come on, come on. Ah, he spooked on that last one. Well, I messed up that one. So the roly-poly, you just put the rod under your armpit and do this hand over hand. Oh, just had a little bump. And if you get a fish to eat on that retrieve, you basically just roly-poly even harder until it locks up. Sometimes you can kind of hit the rod and try and drive it home, but most of the time I just keep roly-polying until it's locked up. And even though the water temperature isn't that warm today, I mean, it's been 47 to 48 degrees depending upon where we're at, the fish have still liked it fairly quick. That's pretty typical of this lake though. They like to chase, especially if you got wind. Sometimes you have to slow down a lot if it's calm like it was at the beginning of the day. But if you got wind, you can pull. They like it fast. Oop. There we go. Oh my gosh. Wow. And for some reason, after stinging him, he didn't come back. I'm having a nice take to hookup ratio right now, aren't I? All right, let's try that again. I saw that fish plain as day. It was a pretty good sized fish, and it ate my top dropper on the hang. I had sort of a little bump mid-retrieve, and a lot of times these fish, if you just keep retrieving and strip strike on them instead of setting with the rod, they'll come back and take it again, no problem. But if you haul up on that rod to set the hook, that's not going to happen. The curse of the camera for my hook sets here. So it always pays to strip set, because a lot of times these fish that eat early on, oh, better get that tingle out. Those fish that eat early on and then retrieve, but you miss them or they just bump it, they'll keep following it, they'll keep chasing it, and you can get them either on the hang or later in the retrieve. But if you set that hook with the rod, they're not going to come back to a fly that's zipped 10 feet, 15 feet away very often. It's out of their vision and out of their zone by then. The fish are definitely higher. I switched up to a type 3 line in between that last, at the end of that last drift, because that's what Connor had on. And he was outpacing me while I had the DI5 on, or the type 5. And so I went to type 3, and I've now had like 5 out of the last 6 casts with at least a take. Haven't hooked most of them, obviously, but there's another little guy. I think that's part of the problem with a lot of these fish. You get some of these like schooling fish out over deep water, and there's a lot of them that are this size. Come on, chill out. I'm just trying to get that hook out. All right, back in you go. But those fish that are on the bank are a little bit bigger on average, although that last hangfish before that was pretty big. All right, back to what I was saying before that massive tangle decided to strike my stripping guide. What was I saying? Something about the hang. Yeah. When fish are following your flies during the retrieve, like on that last couple of retrieves ago, I had a couple little bumps, just bump, that the fish made during the retrieve, and they're following it or nipping at it, and a lot of times you can convert those fish into ones that take by stopping at the end. When you get to that hang point, lift those flies up, make them ascend to the surface, and that ascension like that makes them think that fly is escaping, and they'd better go grab it before it's gone. And so that one ate the point fly, and I hung my top dropper and then my middle dropper, and my point fly was almost near the surface at that point when that fish ate. And if I hadn't hung all 3, let's just say, hook's out, I think. Yep, fly's out, so I'll just let him go. But if I'd stopped the hang on my top, when my top dropper hit the water, or even, right after that, I wouldn't have caught that fish. He followed it up until my point fly was almost all the way to the top. So I even get into that issue sometimes where I'm not, paying real close attention if they haven't been eating on the hang a lot, and then all of a sudden you'll get a swirl right as you go to lift and cast. So make sure when you do that hang that you commit to it, even if the fish haven't been taking much on the hang that day, which they haven't been taking that much for me on the hang today, even though the last time we fished here they were taking a lot on the hang. But commit to it. Still do it every cast, unless you just haven't had a fish even show on the hang the entire day, or if they're only on the bank or something like that. But most of the time I'm going to hang every retrieve, and sometimes you get rewarded, just like with that fish. So another little Stillwater technique to add to your arsenal. So I just caught another small fish, and we took a quick pump sample because I wanted to show you what they had in them. And what you will see is that it's Daphnia soup. Those are all little zooplankton. And at least from what I can see, they are all Daphnia. I don't see any copepods in there. But this time of year, this is pretty much 80 to 90+% of the food source for these fish, especially if they're out suspended. The ones that are in shallow might still have nymphs and leeches, things like that. But now that all the hatches are pretty much over, the fish go in and they suspend out deep and they eat zooplankton. And it's a really important food source for trout in most reservoirs and lakes that's totally overlooked by fly anglers because it's not something we can imitate, but luckily we can still catch fish when they're eating them. And they're usually willing to eat moved, pulled flies, just kind of flashy buggers and typical other flies like that. But don't ignore the Daphnia, and don't think that just because there's nothing hatching in the shallows or the fish are out deep that they aren't still one to eat too. And that's a big food source for them. So I just switched flies. I went to unweighted flies that kept them higher in the column, but they're also smaller flies. And first cast, there we go. I did miss that fish earlier in the retrieve, but I just kept roly-polying, and he came back and ate it just before the hang. This has been a typical average fish today. 14 inches maybe, 15, a lot of them. Not a lot of the biggest fish that this place kicks out, but they're fun nonetheless. So on that last fish, I just switched flies. I had been fishing that micro, or the polar humongous that I have right there. But I don't know if they were just nipping the tail a lot or just not getting it all the way in, but I was missing a lot of fish on that. So I switched to this other point fly. This is just a pine squirrel leech with some flash wound through with it. A little bit smaller black version, and I was able to get that fish to lock up on that last cast. So I guess the lesson today is that whether you're not catching fish, not getting any takes, or if you are getting takes but you're missing them, don't just keep doing the same thing that you're doing thinking that it's suddenly going to work. Really the biggest lesson we've had today is go find the fish. Where we started out, we caught a few fish, and then we checked several spots without them, caught a few fish on the far bank over there, and it really wasn't until this last spot that all of a sudden, boom, there's a whole bunch of fish here. I mean, we're catching lots of fish, having takes on most retrieves, most casts. It's rare that we go more than one or two without a take in this area. And now that it's here, it's marked, we can, keep drilling that well till it's dry. And same thing with the bugs. If you're missing a lot of fish like that, try a different size, different length of tail, and modify the bug if you have to, or what, but don't just keep doing the same thing and expect it all of a sudden to work. Change something. If you're getting a reaction but you're not getting that lockup, change flies, change retrieve, change something, and eventually you can usually put something together where you're gonna get those fish to come to the net. So anyway, we really hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a fun day out. We haven't had that much time to fish, and it took us a couple hours to nail it down, but once we did, we've caught a lot of fish and it's been fun. And while you're at it, please give us a thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we run tacticalflyfisher.com, so come on over to our website and spend a few dollars with us if you liked it. We'd sure appreciate it. Until the next one, have fun out there fishing.